Hey everyone, me and some of my stock asset friends here are very happy to welcome you to the Git and GitHub Bootcamp. So none of these people are my real friends, but they are free images from my slide software, which is pretty good too, and they'll be making some appearances throughout the course in my diagrams. Anyway, none of these fine folks are actually me. This is me here. Hello everyone, my name is Colt Steele. I never know how much detail to go into on my background, but I'll say that I've been teaching people how to program for almost a decade. I've helped thousands of people change careers in my in-person boot camps, but I've also reached over 1 million students online. I always feel a bit weird talking about it, but you can always check out my LinkedIn or my instructor bio if you want more information. All that really matters is that I actually really enjoy teaching Git. It's a challenging thing to teach, and it's a creative challenge for the teacher. So I hope you enjoy the course. I've spent a lot of time trying to make it the best possible Git course. So if you're watching this, you probably already know that Git is this amazing, universal, widespread tool that, along with GitHub, enables and empowers millions and millions of users and companies ranging from tiny startups all the way up to Fortune 50 companies to build things together, to collaborate, and to maintain applications. So you probably already know that, and a lot of people know it. They know it's crucial. Yet, it often goes ignored. It's not the most glamorous topic to learn at the beginning. I totally get why a lot of people prioritize learning JavaScript or CSS or Python or pretty much anything over Git. But the truth is, this is a very annoying expression, that the best time to learn Git is yesterday. Somebody told me something very similar, a neighbor actually, about how the best time to plant fruit trees is 5 years ago. When you hear something like that, it's natural to want to punch that person, strangle them, or maybe just roll your eyes. But there is some truth to this. But also there's another piece to that sentence. The second best time to learn Git is now. The second best time to plant fruit trees is today. Probably the second best time to plant fruit trees, it was 4 years ago. Anyway, the point is that it's very important to try and learn Git as soon as possible along whatever journey you're on. The sooner you learn it, the better. Because it's not just about learning some syntax. That takes some time, but you can watch a video or a course or read a book and learn the basics. But it takes more work. There's more than just learning the basic syntax. The real work comes with part 2, or what I'm calling step 2, actually living as a Git user and breathing Git. It needs to become second nature. Git becomes a fundamental part of your workflow. So that takes time, right? That's why the best time to learn Git is yesterday, blah, blah, blah. But also, that's the goal of this course, to help Git become second nature. So not just to teach you the basics, it's also helping you just learn and live Git, breathe Git in as a user. And that takes time and it takes practice. So that's why this course is more than just a bunch of lectures, although it's a ton of lectures, obviously. I can't get around that. That is one of the core pieces of the course. It has to be educational. There's going to be that explaining the syntax and demonstrating how things work. But also there are quite a few exercises that I built to try and force you to get practice, to try and sort of steer you towards becoming one with Git. So I highly recommend you do those. I'll point them out in a separate video. I want to talk about some strategies for them. I also tried to make it somewhat interesting and entertaining, but also visually, I spent way too much time, I think, making diagrams, and Git is something that I think benefits a lot from thinking about in a visual way. So I spent a lot of time making these diagrams. I hope you appreciate them. And I guess that's really all I have to say right now. Welcome to the course, everyone. I hope you enjoy it. And I'll end this welcome video with one not at all important note. In my courses, I often reference my pet chickens. Throughout my courses, I'll use their names in different files or in exercises, in diagrams, and students inevitably demand photos or videos of my chickens. So I'm just going to get it out of the way here. If you want to see them, here they are. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Once again, welcome, and I hope you enjoy the course. So next up, I'd like to talk about the course curriculum and what we cover, and I'll try to break it down into some smaller pieces, because on the surface, we cover quite a few topics related to Git and GitHub. So there's always a pressure, honestly, in these courses to fit as many related topics as possible into a course just to compete or to stand out in some way. And yeah, I can't ignore that, but I do want to try my best to make it very clear what actually matters and what is fundamental, because not all of this stuff you see in front of you, and there's likely to be more by the time you're actually watching this. There will be more videos or more additional sections added towards the end because students request them. But anyway, not all of these are critical. So there's a couple of chunks, I guess, that I would break things down into. The first bit is all about the core functionality of Git, working with the very, very basics, things like adding and committing and creating repositories, git log, git status, creating branches, checking out, switching, merging. That is your core Git toolbox. And then we talked about, I'm calling it next level Git, but it's not crazy difficult stuff. It's just a couple of Git topics that won't come up as often. They're not part of your day-to-day Git life, but they still are very important. So we talk about diffing, the git diff command, stashing, and then we talk about quite a few ways of time traveling in Git or undoing changes. Git revert, git reset, git restore, undoing changes and going back to old work and detaching and reattaching the head. And there's quite a bit of stuff in that section. So it's important, but it's just not part of this Git core. Then we move on to GitHub and collaboration. So I've grouped together 4 sections here. I don't really have a nice title for it, but we basically learn about the basics of GitHub, working with GitHub, getting our code up on GitHub, getting stuff down from GitHub. We talk about things like GitHub pages and GitHub gists and collaboration workflows. That's a very significant chunk of this course. We spend a lot of time on that, talking about the different ways that you could use Git with a team to collaborate along with GitHub, and different structures, different strategies you can employ. There's not just one way, and they all have some certain strengths and weaknesses. So I demonstrate those and spend a lot of time talking about it. It's pretty important stuff. So I've grouped that together with GitHub. And then after that, it's kind of just a mixture of other Git stuff that I felt compelled to include. And these are some of the more advanced topics or the niche topics. So this includes things like rebasing, cleaning up your Git history with interactive rebasing, squashing, dropping, fixing up, all sorts of sort of fun parts, in my opinion. We talk about tags. We talk about how Git works behind the scenes and hashing. We cover things like Git objects, Git blobs, Git trees. So there's stuff in here that you could go your whole life as a Git user without knowing. I think it's worth giving you the option, at least, to check it out if you're curious. We talk about creating custom aliases and shortcuts and ref logs. That's a fun one. I'm happy with how that section turned out. And as I said, there's likely to be more. If you scroll down right now through the curriculum, there's likely more content in the course that's not included here. So to recap this, there's quite a bit, and it's all Git and GitHub oriented, but there's this first chunk that is the core of Git on its own. Then we talk about some next level Git topics that are absolutely important to know, but they're not part of your typical hour-to-hour or day-to-day use case for Git, or they might not be. And then we talk about GitHub and collaboration workflows, and then it's just a bunch of other Git-related topics at the end that I had a lot of fun recording. Okay. So let's get started. Next up, I'd like to talk a little bit about the exercises in the course. A very important piece, easy to overlook as a student, but I think are very important to really understanding and living and breathing Git. You have to practice it. It's not just the syntax. So throughout the course, there are exercises sprinkled in. And I have to be honest, creating these exercises is not always that easy because unlike other things that I teach, CSS or JavaScript or Python, where I can ask students to make something and very clearly set out, here are the expectations, make this thing. With Git, it's not really about making things, it's about the workflows. So I had to get pretty creative, or I tried my best to come up with exercises. I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. I just want to show you where to find them and the basics of how they work. So the exercises are at the end of sections. So for example, this is a section intro to GitHub. The very last video is GitHub basics exercise. Or here's undoing changes in history. The last video is undoing changes exercise. So there are videos where I explain the exercise. Let me mute this here. So I explain how it works and what I'm expecting you to do. And then I go ahead and do it myself. Sort of a solution, but I always recommend you try it yourself first. And then if you want the actual exercise document for every single one of these, in resources, you'll find a link. click it, and it will take you to the exercise document that I created. So it has the instructions, the different files, there might be some starter code that I give you, the different expectations, step by step, what I'm asking you to do. So one of these documents exists for every exercise in the course, and you'll find it attached to the exercise video. So that's where you can find them. Again, I hope that you get something out of them. The only way you'll know is if you actually attempt them. So I really encourage you to do this in person when I teach Git. The most learning, without a doubt, happens when students actually try using it and just get practice. It's a weird thing to watch somebody use Git. You really need to do it yourself to get anything out of it. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the exercises. That's how you find them. Please do them. One more quick note about the course. I made a lot of diagrams and slides, and I'm sure some of you will want access to them yourself. You can find the slides for every single section that has them, which is pretty much every section, attached to the first video. So the very first video in each section is always titled, What Really Matters in This Section? And it's a video where I walk through the different topics that I cover and I sort them into critical, important, and nice to have. And just give you a heads up about, don't stress about this and do worry about this. So attached to each one of those videos at the beginning of a section, there's a resource that says slides for this section. So you'll see that here, here's the installation slides, and you have access to them, right? The different commands, and the same holds true for all of the different sections. So if you want to learn more about the slides for, working with GitHub, go to that first video in the section, slides in the resources, and here you are. Okay, so that's all I want to say. First video of every section, I explain what matters in that section, but also that's where you find the slides for the rest of that section. Okay,